Hey, my name is Arlene and you're watching Striving Artist. We are here at Loud Mouse Studios in Etobicoke and I'm so excited to chat with my friend Kevin Dietz. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day.
No problem. Thank you.
So I'm excited to chat with you because I've known you for just a few months. However, you've done so much, like based on our past conversations. Can you talk to us about your journey from going to school for engineering and then to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I did a year of school for audio engineering. I think about 12 years ago now, maybe longer.
Wow.
A long time ago. I moved here from Edmonton in the fall of 2005 and then did a year of schooling. And right after that, I was fortunate to get an opportunity at a major studio that was connected to the school, and I worked there for 8 years on staff.
Wow. And from that transition, was it something that you reached out to achieve, or was it something that they gave to you?
It was something I reached out to achieve. It was a plan of mine. Moving across the country obviously is a pretty big thing, and my whole goal was to I had sort of an amateur background in recording and audio engineering back home.
Cool.
Playing in bands and recording demos and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I wanted to go pro, and I figured the best way to do that would be to really hone my basic skills with a little bit of schooling, and then really hit it and try and find an opportunity in the industry.
Nice.
So that was my sort of singularly focused goal.
Okay, cool.
And that's exactly what I ended up doing the year of schooling. I excelled in that. I graduated top of my class, and then
Nice.
and then I went to the studio and said, I want a job here. I want to work here. I'm ready to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring. So just talking about, you leaving a place that you grew up in to some place that you probably you don't know anybody here unless you have made the connections prior. Like how did that work for you? Did you reach out to people that were here? Did you kind of network at school, network around the scene? Just for people that are thinking about making a move to another city.
Yeah, I did. I came out here without knowing anyone.
Wow.
It was all, but it was definitely centered around the schooling at first.
Okay.
Because I knew that was that was going to be a full-time thing, so I knew that would take up all my time at first. So the plan was, part one of the plan was to do the schooling and focus only on that, and really just hit it hard and excel in that, and then I would figure it out after that. So yeah, I came out here without knowing anyone, started going to school, and then instantly you meet people, you form friendships, you're all going through the same program together. So for the first little bit, it was all focused on the people at the school. I didn't really, it was a lot of work. It was a pretty busy program, so I didn't really go out much or didn't really have too much of a social life outside of the people I went to school with.
Which made you top of your class, that's pretty cool.
Well, I had like a singular focus on it. I was really determined to, it was just like, it was a very clear thing that I was ready to just commit full time to that.
I think that's really important, especially with people with like these dreams and goals that they want to achieve, like to have that specific focus. I think a lot of us, for me, for example, I have a lot of things I want to do, but it sounds like with your focus that helped you achieve, graduating, and also you said figuring it out, right? Is that something that you've always done in the past? Like, you just throw yourself into it and you just figure it out. Is that something that you would recommend to other people? Is that something that you learned over the years?
That's a really interesting question. That's absolutely not what I did in the past.
Okay.
Which is kind of an interesting thing to look back on, because I wasn't much of a risk taker. My hometown, Edmonton, it was a great place to grow up. It's very blue collar, very trades oriented, which is fine. And I was kind of starting off in that world. But I always had a place in my heart for the arts and for music, and I just didn't really see being able to have a future doing it there. And just that's just for me personally. There certainly is an art scene there. There certainly is a music scene there. I just didn't see a place for myself there in what I wanted to do. So for me personally, it was a pretty big thing to make that big of a change, move across the country. It was a risk, sort of, you know.
Right.
I wouldn't say it was putting all my eggs into one basket, because there's always the opportunity to, I could have gone and done that year of schooling and then gone, well, I'm going to go back now, or I'm going to do something else. You know, you're never trapped in life. Mm-hmm. So I never felt that way, but it was a big thing for me to do personally.
I bet.
To do that.
That's some great advice there, especially if someone is considering doing something like that. Like, there's always something, like, you can go into it, figure it out, see if you like it, and then after that, you know, if it's not for you, you can move on to something else. I think a lot of people are afraid to even start, you know, going after what they really want.
It's very intimidating to do that, or it can be. There are some people, I know a lot of people who just go full on head first into what they're doing, and they figure it out, they work it out. And I really admire those people because they do it, the people I know who operate that way, they don't do it recklessly.
Right.
They're smart about it. So it's all about taking a chance, but, you know, kind of setting things up and thinking about it ahead of time so that you're mitigating the amount of risk. You're taking a chance, but it's not the be all end all.
Right.
And I admire that in people who go that route.
Awesome. Was there anyone in your path that you seeked out for mentorship, or was it something more of like you were just actually, you know, seeing what worked for you at the time?
No, there was. Early on, back in my hometown, there's an audio engineer by the name of Phil Anderson, and he has a studio out in Edmonton called Power Sound, and he was an early mentor of mine. And when I decided, it had been a few years since I'd kind of worked with him in the studio and learned from him in the studio, and when I decided to make the move out here, I did it all on my own. I didn't really tell my family. I wanted to sort of put the plan in place first, and then say, here's what I've decided to do. Because I wasn't sure if they were going to, what they were going to think of that idea. And it turned out they were 100% supportive.
That's
and
awesome.
always have been. Yeah, it was great. And
Cool.
that's such an important thing. You need that support network.
For sure.
But yeah, Phil was a good early mentor. And when I sort of hatched this plan to do it, I sent him a message right away and said, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And he said, go for it. And he had some good advice on how to, you know, go about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And quickly before we wrap up, I just want to know how you went from, you know, being an employee with your previous employer to an independent contractor as a audio engineer.
Yeah, that was another big step, right? That was kind of part two. I spent 8 years on staff at a studio and learned a lot and got to meet a whole bunch of people. Networking is key, especially in the arts. You need to make that personal connection because people want to work with people that they like, that are good people, that have a good vibe. So I spent 8 years working at this studio in order to do that and learn all my skills. So going freelance, it was kind of the natural time. That it just sort of, things fell into place and it kind of really made sense to do that. And one of the biggest steps was just reaching out to some people about how to operate as your own business.
Right.
And just things involved in that. So the work I do doesn't really change, It's just sort of the, how I go about planning my days and what you have to do in regard to taxes and finances.
Right.
You have to be more business conscious about that. So artists should never forget that that's an important thing to learn the business side. Otherwise, though, the transition was very natural because it was just the right time. And I just got the right signs that it was the right time.
That's amazing. It just sounds so organic, the way that your journey has come. And we're going to chat a little bit more about what you've got to do in the past in terms of who you got to work with, this awesome studio. Tell us about your most recent project.
Most recently, a project I'm really excited about is I got to be the engineer on the new album for the Glorious Sons, which we recorded up in Kingston, in their hometown. Previously, they'd recorded elsewhere in the GTA, and their previous album was in Los Angeles. And this time, the producer from LA came up, and we recorded it in a house that had a pro-built studio out back in Kingston. So it was probably the best recording experience of my life. It was just awesome.
Cool. And how did that connection turn about?
Well, like I had mentioned, I was on staff at a studio for 8 years, and I had met their label people from Black Box Music.
Cool.
Who are based out of Mississauga. And Jason Murray and Ian Stanger from Black Box would come in and bring artists right when they were sort of first putting the label together, and they were just starting to work with artists, I guess. They would bring artists into the studio, and I was the engineer on the sessions. So nice. I just formed a relationship with them over the years, and as they brought in more artists, I would work with them, and they started working with the Glorious Sons, and eventually they called me in on a few projects, and
wow.
and here we are. I'm so grateful for that connection. It's
That's
one of those
so cool.
things about networking, who you meet along the way,
right?
and keeping those relationships.
And it seems like that's one of the common themes, especially with a lot of the other artists on the show that I've talked to. It's a lot of networking, just making sure everybody knows what you do. Is that something that you've learned over the years? Is that something that you've always done?
I think it's very particular to the industry and to the arts. It's important in any industry because every business is a people business when it comes down to it. You need to make some kind of personal connection at the end of the day. But it's definitely in the arts, it's very specific to that. So I learned it through being in the industry, just picking up on it, that it's really all about friendships and relationships.
Cool. Can you remember your first project that you worked on as an independent engineer?
I think a friend of mine approached me saying that she was working with a band that needed some mixing done, and I had just gone freelance, and so I said, sure, great. She put me in contact with the band,
cool.
And I ended up mixing some stuff, and then, that was years ago. I've been freelance for about 5 years now, so it was about 5 years ago. The band has now changed. It's now a different band with a bunch of the same members.
Cool.
And I just recently did some songs with them here at Loudmouse.
Nice.
So again, it's like through the years things change. People go this way and that, but if you keep those good relationships, then people are always going to want to come back to you and go, hey, remember we did some work together? I really liked working with you.
Right.
I got a new thing on the go. Let's work together.
Nice. That's cool. I'm interested. So on the other side, you said you used to play in a band. Is that something that you would like to do, or talk to us about that? Because I'm always curious about that side.
Well, that's how I came to really be fully engulfed in music is by playing guitar and playing in a band back in Edmonton. But I kind of figured out early on that that wasn't really the path I wanted to pursue. Yeah, everyone wants to be a rock star or whatever, but I really felt that my skills were and my interests were pulling me more toward the technical side and behind the glass and working with other musicians, but maybe not being the guy myself.
Right. Have you ever had to be on the other side just for sessions where you had to play?
I've played on a few things, but I I work with so many amazingly talented musicians and session players that there's really, sometimes I do it out of necessity, or I might have a cool part that I can just lay down really quickly.
Right.
But if we need any serious musicianship, Toronto and the GTA, the whole area is just filled with incredible musicians.
That's true.
So there's so many people to call in that can just, blow your mind musically.
Cool.
I'd rather let them, I'd rather support their ventures in that regard and
Right.
have them on the sessions.
Right. While you do your magic out here.
Well, I do my magic. It's a good relationship that way.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kevin.
Thank you.
This is great. And if you're ever around in Etobicoke or even in Ontario or want to get a hold of Kevin Dietz, you're on Instagram. We'll have that.
I'm on Instagram. I have a website, email. I'm connected.
Cool. Sweet. And he's super awesome. So great to work with. I've got a chance to work with Kevin very briefly. Make sure you guys stay tuned. I've got that special treat for you.